What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the discussion on just mental diets, and especially getting into revision, which is a Neville Goddard technique in the law of assumption. And what that kind of is, for those who are unaware, it's where you look at the past and give it a new meaning, tell yourself a new story about it. And it's really helpful, especially if you get these reoccurring patterns of thinking, especially where you're like feeling like a victim, feeling like you're not worthy, feeling not good enough. All of these types of stories that we tell ourselves mostly come from the past. And so once you realize how much your present situation in life is being reflected, your inner beliefs, your assumptions, basically your paradigm of reality, what your inner man believes to be real, is being objectified in the screen of space in your life. And you start to steward what you have, but then also realize that what you thought in the past, what you felt in the past, doesn't just fade away to oblivion, but it's always cycling back in the present moment. And if you keep telling yourself these stories that are just disempowering and on some level just not even real, start looking at those and giving these situations new meaning. And so one of the easier ways to do that is find what is triggering you from not feeling at peace and at joy now. I mean, really now is the time where you embody these states of consciousness, especially the elevated states of consciousness that don't involve suffering, where you're able to see the connectivity of all things. When you're being more and more still, connecting with love, which is another way of saying connecting with God, you start to see that being reflected more and more so. And so you don't change the reflection by just sitting there praying that the reflection will change. You be the change, and then the reflection will follow suit in God's timing. And this is something you can test and try for yourself, which I encourage you to do that, where, get out of this programming of this external expert that knows everything that you don't know, and you just got to depend on what their wisdom and understanding is. The teacher is within you. And so really, if you're using these different perspectives to help develop your own walk with God, that's one thing. But it's another to sit there and start to idolize and put people on pedestals. As somebody who plays like music, especially guitar, it's easy to, in the past, look at like people that are really good players and just be like, oh, you can never be as good as they are. Or, was that one story that you could say to yourself? Or, oh, they must have sold their soul to Satan so that they could play that good. Or, that's another story that we tell ourselves, but you can start to revise the way we think about these different things, so instead of like, making somebody on this pedestal that just takes away their humanity on some level, like they're not a person that maybe dedicated hours and hours in practicing and really focus their attention in this. Instead, it's easier just to put your own drama and bullshit on other people, where it's like, oh, they must have got the easy way. They must have just been born some savant that just was able to pick it up and just fucking go for it. It's like you start hearing those things too from people from time to time. Especially if you're kind of doing something outside of the norm, which I feel like a lot more people will start to do as society continues to implement some of these radical, which I would describe as radical body autonomy concepts, where it's like you no longer have any say over what's going on with your body and what you put in it. It's like, you got to just let the masters tell you what to put in your body. Heaven forbid you decide what you can put in your body. Or it's like, then I can start getting triggered when it comes to these mandates and everything, mainly because they're so retarded. And like it's crazy to me that people put authority on these outside entities to base, and then, but at the same time, it's all biblical, and there's verses in there. It's like talking about, what the dangers of not, putting your faith in God is that you start to become a slave to these outer powers and principalities, basically. And a lot of those powers and principalities are not real in the sense that they exist outside of you. It's your inner beliefs and your assumptions about these entities and the powers that they supposedly have. You give them the power, so it's part of like the sin of Adam, where it's like you empowered the they that are now enslaving you. But the simplest way to start breaking free of that is to revise how you think about these things. And as someone now who's like I don't know how many years I've been doing the handyman business, but maybe it's 4 years. I have to look at the LinkedIn page, because that's really the only way I keep track of it, because it all just seems like, oh, it's just always what I've been doing. But like even with that, it's just like as you start doing new things, you start having new thoughts, and you start seeing and experiencing reality through these different levels, and so it's like maybe at one point in time when you're maybe at a lower level of consciousness, the reflection of reality was showing you and confirming, maybe feeling like a victim, or like, oh, somebody's like got some break that you don't got. It's like, no, they're a white guy, so they get all the breaks. It's like, as somebody, I don't know how people perceive me, if they perceive me as like a white guy, which I feel like is a make-believe concept, because what does it mean to be white? What is that? Is that just like another term for the they? Is kind of what it means to me, is just, oh, the they. But at the same time, it's like my experience is like being like Italian, and so it's like I don't think Italian. A lot of people where I live thought I was Mexican. My brother too. There was one time he was like walking to class, and like the Spanish teacher just started speaking Spanish to him. He never even took a Spanish class, and then people were like looking around like, "What is that about?" And he's like, "I don't know." And so it's these assumptions, these beliefs that we put on other people, to make it seem like, oh, they got it easier or whatever. These are the types of things to start to revise. And instead of looking at that as like, oh, let's tell us a story about how they got a break that we didn't get, you can start looking at these things as they confront you and go, well, let's say a new story. One of the things, like for the truth community, is like this helplessness of the basically attributing godlike attributes to the synagogue of Satan, basically, where it's just like, oh, they got all of this, and they got all that, they can mess with the weather, they can quantum computing, and it's like, and you just build this up, and so it's such a matrix of just evil, basically. You can start to radically change how you're interpreting reality. And this is one of the reasons I stopped listening to a lot of truth videos, because it's just like, how many years are you going to be at the edge of your seat for this impending doom? It's like, I've been listening to the same people for a decade, and it's always the same thing. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's like, that's part of the spell, I feel like, is this this hopelessness of the future, this disaster unfolding in the present moment, because it's only ever now. And so it's like the spiritual battle, if anything, is happening in the present moment, and whether you're choosing to be in fear or choosing to express love, which ultimately is a state of being that doesn't have fear and torment associated with it. Because like a lot of times the old man, and this has to do with revising our beliefs and our understanding about what love means. What is love? Part of that I feel like is you define it through experience by knowing what you're not, because the old man embodied fear. And so it's like, basically it's everything that you aren't, and like the fundamental error of the old man's thinking is that it's a separate being in a body, like a brain in a body that's separate from the surrounding people, events, everything. It just feels like it's alone in a body, and it can get away with anything. But everything is like more quantum. It's maybe a scientific label that we can put on these things, where it's like with the quantum field and everything else, and the power of like maybe observation, attention, our consciousness. You can start to see some of that through like the double slit experiment, where the observer has an effect on the outcome of the experiment, which has been duplicated over and over again. I mean, it's something that experiment in itself is something that's should be talked about more. But then you have more subtle things like the placebo effect, where you can take a sugar pill and your cancer goes away. Yes, how is that possible if materialism's real? But part of it is like throwing out that old understanding, where there's like is like Newtonian way of thinking, and getting more into the present moment awareness with consciousness. All things are possible. When you look at what Jesus was saying in the Bible, with the lens of like he's speaking metaphysical truth that applies now. It's always coming from a space of talking about now, where the old man was thinking that he was addressing the people in the quote unquote past. It's just as relevant for today because God's in the ever present eternal now. And you start to know that more through experience as you just become more and more still, and you get these veils of fear removed as your faith starts to grow, almost to it gets to like a knowing where it's not even, faith has a little bit of like, I'm jumping out into faith, like this. If you look at like a lot of the biblical characters as states of consciousness, like the state of consciousness of Abraham, is like something that we all pass through in the evolution of our inner man, of our soul, where it's just like you're just, taking things on blind faith, where it's like, I don't know. I believe this person for some reason, and I'm just going to test it too. That's kind of representing like the Abrahamic kind of state of faith. But this is all kind of just stuff that you can try on for yourself. But like as you start to do that more and more, so step out into faith. When the old man comes in with fear, address that, becoming still, facing the fear, going for it. You start to recognize this pattern where it's like as soon as you put your faith in a new direction, a lot of times it's almost like your resistance starts to manifest. That shows you, this is part of revising. Of course, there in the past, it's like, oh, it feels like an attack. As soon as I put my faith in a new direction, it's like I'm confronted by the opposite of all this drama and everything else. But revision starts to allow you to reinterpret what's happening through a different lens, almost like a higher perspective, where it's like, oh, well, instead of this big dramatic story I'm telling myself about good and evil, and like, I'm moving in a direction of faith, and so now all of a sudden I'm getting attacked by demonic forces. That's one way to look at it, which I found that to be helpful at first season, where it just kind of become more and more obvious, the same pattern now. Whereas like you face the opposite first, but it's really you're seeing what is holding you in this state when really nothing's holding you in this state. It's as simple as like when you start to feel the fear, go, that's the old man. That's not who I am anymore. I'm going to tell myself a new story, and just allow infinite intelligence to start moving you in a direction. Planting the new seeds and just going with it to see what happens. But you start to look at the world. The world in which you operate and live and move and have your being, and instead of looking at it as like, oh, some satanic Truman show, you like look biblically at what is the Bible, what does God say in there about reality, and you can really look at a lot of it as like living in a holographic simulation. There's a verse that says, we live and move and have our being inside of God, but then also God is within us. And so you start getting this concept of as within, so without, starts to become more and more practical. And as it becomes more and more practical, and you start to see how more and more things are possible through faith as you start to move in the direction of testing your faith, it's like, I hear a lot of people like, maybe having fears and concerns with like peer pressure and like leverage from their employers about, if you don't inject this shit into your body, then you're gonna be fired. And I don't know, as someone who never really operated that well inside of an office environment, or just having a ball, like, I don't know, it's just, I've never been into that kind of vibe where it'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to throw my principles out the window and just get this shit just because if not, I'll have to find another job. And maybe it's for people that make, decent money. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to go do handyman work and get dirty. I'd rather sit in a cozy office and move numbers around on a screen. But like, I kind of get it though. If it was like, oh, I always wanted to be a I don't know, a veterinarian or something. I don't know if those are getting peer pressured as much as like maybe a nurse. I guess it seems like nursing and the healthcare industry in general has gone mad. But with that, it's like I can see how people maybe have some fear, but the reality is if you are providing a service, a lot of times you can transfer that to doing it on your own. It's like you could just as easily find another line of work doing the same stuff, as far as I'm concerned, at least. And this is coming from somebody who's like been I don't know, years into like being a business owner, self-employed, making, getting out of that whole fucking paradigm of loans and banking and shit like that. It's like, yeah, I have a bank account to cash checks, but I don't keep more than, just enough that they don't give me a hard time about cashing checks. That's about it. But like, yeah, so I get the fear, because I can kind of remember when I made the transition from like working with like a steady paycheck to the unknown, and that was like intense at first. But I can tell you, as someone who knows this as a fact, God provides. So it's like as you move in the direction of fulfilling your God-given passions. I mean, God created you to do something. Not to. Most people are miserable at their jobs, anyway, and so it's like, maybe that's a sign to do something different. Get out of that comfort zone of, if I have my 401k and this and that, and I take one vacation a year, and I have a good credit score because I know exactly how much money I'm making every single week, and blah 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 blah. And step into that new life, the one that maybe you've set aside, like, oh, that's not for me. That's for somebody else. I'm not worthy of like that dream life. Where do you think that dream comes from? Think about it. It's like, start moving in that new perfect time. There is a labor shortage where I live, at least, and so it's like, if you can do things, you be just fine. And especially once you realize that all of it has to do with your faith, basically your inner man being externalized. Like, if you know that God's your provider, you have nothing to fear, and it's something that you learn through experience. I mean, you can hear me say that, but once you start like a business, or just start mowing yards, or fucking cleaning somebody's house, or just doing something for other people, a lot of times I hear in a truth community this very triggering baggage when it comes to money, but once you start to equate, and most of that has to do with the story that you're telling yourself about it. It's like, oh, these Babylonian fiat currency, and oh, it's the root of all evil, and I'm not evil, so I don't want to touch it. I'd rather just be digging through scraps and just being look at all of these stories that you're telling yourself about it, and start to revise those. Change your belief into something more positive, where it's like, God takes pleasure in prospering me, and so that's where money comes from God. And start to believe that. It's like, money is a result of energy exchange, where value is exchanged back for this. I started to think of it just in terms of like living out in nature. It's like, really, what would you be doing? Be like hunting. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be hunting for things, looking for food. So it's like, oh, I'm just hunting for dollars. That's one way to change your mindset about it. Think about all the good you can do for people if you had it. That's the other part of like the truth community victim mentality. It's like, by not being the change, by not taking positions of power or positions that involve like finance, you're basically making it very easy for people to just take those positions. It's like, who do you want to be in power? Some unconscious person or somebody who's conscious? So it's like, if you want people that are conscious to be in leadership positions, then become someone who ends up in leadership positions. It kind of works like that. But start revising these things that are triggering and limiting you, and do that with your Creator. Get in the Bible and see what it says. It's like yeah, it's already been done. It's just like a process of just realizing it and realizing that you've already been blessed with everything. It's like you are the only reason that it's being pushed away is your resistance towards it, and that resistance can be kind of dealt with through letting go or through revising, looking back why you believe the things you believe anyway. And why are you telling yourself this story? It's like, are you telling yourself this story from a time that you were a child and you just continue to tell yourself this? Can you re-reason on it as like an adult? Go for it. Re-reason on it. Why not? Especially when you're re-reasoning on things that aren't serving you anyway. So definitely want to bring that to you guys' attention, because I feel like it's very important. Especially when it comes to maybe your position in society. It's like a lot of times I hear from like the truth community, it just feels like they're outcasts, like on some level, but like I feel like a lot of that, it can be changed through revision, because a lot of people feel like, oh, you can't do anything in the world unless you are part of some elite little like secret group or whatever. Well, that's just a story you're telling yourself, and it's not surprising then that story then manifests because you believe it. But start telling yourself a new story. Tell yourself that no one gets where they're at. People are where they are because of their relationship with God. Start telling yourself that story, because it's just as plausible. And then the resistance is, well, no, because I've seen blah 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 blah, and I have all these excuses and reasons because I've been in this identity, and it's manifested. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So change your belief and assumption, and as you move in a direction of the new man, letting that old you go, you'll start seeing that change reflected. And once you start seeing it reflected so many times, then it's like, oh, well, then why would I tell myself any story that involves suffering and fear? If I just drop it, let it go, and revise it, and tell myself a new story, and then watch how my perception of reality then starts to shift, and then, things start to harden into fact, and then it's like, oh, so it's always been that way, and I just now realized it. You do that enough times, you start getting to a point of just like realizing that it's ridiculous to listen to this old man narrative, mainly because you just stop wanting to hurt yourself. Because once you realize that all you're doing is hurting yourself, it's insane to continue to do that. So hopefully that helps somebody out there maybe just choose not to be doing that. Other than that, I think I'm going to bounce. I got taking pretty much the rest of the day off. I've been past 2 days doing a bunch of estimates and getting jobs lined up, which getting ready to start another job tomorrow. My guy's out at a job now. I don't know if you've... Yeah, never mind. He just texted. I texted him a while ago asking how it was going. I've been really giving him a lot of freedom when it comes to not being like on his ass about, oh, where are you at and how's things going. It's like I sent him a text last night telling him about this job and to be there in the morning, and I just texted him at lunch because he takes lunch, and just asked him how things were going, and that told him about the guy's gonna pay him today. Blah blah blah. And so but then he didn't text me back for like half hour, which gave me time to do that. But then he just texted, everything's going good. And so really really excited. It's really satisfying that's all working out really well. There was a time earlier on, I think around midsummer, May, June, I had like 3 guys working for me, which was intense, intense in like not the greatest way. A lot of it dealing with incompetence and just drama, unnecessary drama. But like a lot of that was my own. I was really just trying to scale dramatically, and it worked, and I see just in my numbers, that God provided for those people. But then part of like pushing that limit, that boundary, to grow and evolve, is just wanting to just see it in action, and then seeing it in action, seeing how the amount of jobs and customers it all synced up for being able to pay for those guys. They're like what was it, base pay for all, it was like $1,500 a week, that I was having to, pay, and I was paying bonuses on top of that, because I tried to get like a base pay plus commission, so that there's just an incentive to not only show up and do it, but then do it timely and do a good quality job. So profit sharing is what I thought would be a way to do that. And so, continuing to do that seems to work out well, I guess, for me. And the guy that's working for me, I think likes the situation and is like motivated, for bigger jobs and stuff. And so, it seems to be working out good. And I don't know, we'll see how things progress into the winter. Like, it's like somebody who like is in a climate where winter gets pretty fucking cold. It's like very common that it gets below like 10 degrees below zero. I don't know what that is for Fahrenheit. Let me just do a quick thing for everybody else on the planet that might be listening. Jeez. Getting really sloppy with my spelling skills, with Google just filling in, did you mean this? This is like just getting very close to it. It's like, close enough. Fahrenheit. Okay, so what we're doing, calculator. I don't need the calculation, bud. I don't want to do the math. Calculator. It's not even. Okay, so 0 degrees Fahrenheit is negative 17.77777778 Celsius. So let's do negative 10, like negative 23 Celsius. Okay. Yeah, so it gets cold, and it's snowy and shitty, and but at the same time trying, every year that I bought this house, when I bought my house, it has like been abandoned for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and like it was stripped down to like the studs. The people that was in here before gutted all the copper and shit out of the walls. And so like when I first moved in here, it was fucking so drafty in here. Ridiculous, and like the furnace was just running nonstop trying to keep up, and been adding a lot more insulation. I just did a bunch of insulation this year. I got more to put up, and so I'm excited to see how much of it already makes a huge difference that I can feel, and you can hear it in the I don't know, if you've done enough of that kind of work, you can walk into a room and the sound of the room, you can tell if the room's well insulated. And so I'm getting a lot more of that in my house, which is nice, and continue to kind of work on the house, get it prepped for winter. I'd like to buy a wood-burning stove this year. There's been some drama with that, and insurance for some reason, they don't like you to have those, but like oh well, but like I got a bunch of buddies that have woods, and like they got like ash borer, whatever that is, who for some reason the trees are just dying, and like that's what they say it is. I don't know if that's real, if that's really the cause of it or what, but a lot of these guys are like, if you can just go in there and clear the trees out, you can just keep the wood. That's all you gotta do is go out and pick it up and cut it yourself. And so it'd be plenty of wood, to heat in the winter, which I might hopefully maybe do. We'll see. It's on the agenda for sure. But like just kind of prepping, kind of getting things ready for winter, and hopefully this is really comfortable winter. Last year was a pretty comfortable winter. It's not the case a few winters ago, but like hopefully not too dramatic of a fucking cold thing going on. And we got the chickens going. I'm gonna spend the rest of the day. I got some paint. I'm just gonna work around my house. I got some paint coming off on the soffits and fascia of my house Then when I get up there and paint those, and then I got like a mattress and shit that needs burnt, and yeah, clean the chicken coop and all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, but it's a nice day, and so I didn't really want to work. I did a little job for a guy. I didn't even ask for any money. It was just he's like a veteran, and so try to, for the veterans in my community that I do work for, try to just like hook them up or whatever. Like I stained his deck around my birthday, then painted his bathroom, and like today I was like looking at replacing an exterior door, and his like garage weather stripping's all kind of loose and shit. And he's trying to prep for winter, and so he wanted a new door and that. And I ended up his other door, the deadbolt wasn't shutting right, and so ended up just kind of fucking with it and getting it to shut a lot better. And so yeah, and that only took a couple, 5-10 minutes to do, and so I didn't even charge him anything just to do that. I just did it just to do it. And so other than that, I got a painting job tomorrow, and I already got the paint picked up, and I think I'm gonna take the rest of the afternoon for myself and maybe a mental health day. Enjoy like the blue sky and like 70 degrees, and start a fire and do a little painting, work outside and chill, and just kind of just be present and still and enjoy life, and hopefully inspire others. You can have that kind of lifestyle too. I mean, I kind of forget so many people are just like work, and pandemic. I gotta this and that. I just don't live in that world anymore. it's just so far removed for me. It's just like, but at the same, I don't really listen to that shit as like, oh, I'm scared of what that's gonna. It's just because I pay attention. I just do spiritual things, with my life. It's just, the whole madness with just that the world is not. It's not new. It's been like this. It's just more manifest. But even so, I mean, you still have like this. And not to sit there and even judge creation, because you start to see how it all works, and people do it to themselves, and I mean, if you start to kind of live by like spiritual law and being under grace, and just like realizing that God's already blessed you, and kind of just living in that end state now, like how would you feel if you're already in heaven? Would you worry about these things? Would it matter? Kind of try to embody that. And you can start getting a lot of resistance with that, so it's easier to maybe start small of like, oh, how would it feel just to be on vacation right now? You kind of put yourself into that energy. It's like, the same thing I've noticed too with for me, it's like dealing with like pain and shit like that. It's a lot of resistance when it comes to just like, like a miraculous healing. It's like just boom like that, which I believe is totally possible because of, again, I feel like the body is no different than anything else in the 3D world, where it's just a reflection of the inner man belief of what you think it is. But, there's so much resistance, that I experience, where it's like, oh, it's easier for me to like set small goals and like gains and experience those, and then move to the next one, where it's like, I get that it could just immediately happen, but for me it's easier to start that momentum before that just big push. Just moving the momentum in a new direction, I feel like is helpful, and maybe something to share for others that might be dealing with resistances of their own, maybe when it comes to jobs and stuff, feeling like, it's hard to make money. Wrong. It's easy to make money. It is surprisingly easy, especially when you realize that it's coming from God. So it's like, once you change your mindset about it, and realize that as you're doing God's will, God's rewarded of those that seek, and God takes pleasure in prospering you. And as triggering as that might be for the starving artists out there of the truth community that just want to be the purists, or whatever. I've dealt with that with music too. I mean, it's such a bad mindset and toxic, and at the same time breeds jealousy and envy, and just a lot of states of consciousness that are not very desirable, because there's some suffering and some bullshit. But when you realize that anything anybody else has, you can have too, because God's the one that provided it to them. It takes a lot of that jealousy and envy away when you realize that. And so start to revise maybe the story you're telling yourself that contradicts that statement. And revise it however you see fit. Do it. Go within and ask God how to do it. To give you the story to tell. As everything's unique, and your interpretation of reality is going to be unique too. And so, with that being said, I think I'm about. So thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing. I thank you for your spiritual support and your financial support. I'm sharing the videos with your friends and tweeting them and sharing them on social media and all that kind of fun stuff. And other than that, have a good rest of your now, and God bless.